Thank you all for joining us. We're going to have a panel discussion today regarding diversity and inclusion. As I'm sure you're all aware, this is a very hot topic right now. And the fact of the matter is that due to changing demographics, society itself is changing. And as an industry, we need to keep up with those changes and in most cases be ahead of those changes to best serve our customers. What we hope to do today is give you an idea of what you can do to foster diversity within your staff and also build a culture of diversity and inclusion within your leadership. With that, I would like to introduce my esteemed panelists, beginning with Nina Dosanjh. She's a realtor with Vanguard Properties and immediate past president of the San Francisco Association of Realtors. Monica Pena, who's the CEO of the Greater McAllen Association of Realtors and Multiple Listing Service, and Cliff Long, CEO of the Orlando Regional Realtor Association. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so I'd like to get started and kind of give the audience a little bit of context as to help them understand this conversation and why it's necessary. To do that, I would like for each of you to share an experience that you've had regarding diversity and inclusion, how you dealt with that experience, and particularly the roadblocks and negative aspects that occurred because of it. Let's start with Nina.
Oh gosh, okay. So I will say one of my very first encounters or experiences of kind of thinking of myself as, you know, somebody that was on the outside was a big industry event that I had went to in my very, very first role as a young leader at the San Francisco Association. And I was sitting at an installation banquet, and the woman next to me came up to me and asked me what country I was from. And I said, America. And the next follow-up question was, no, really, what country are you from? And I think at that point, it was, the two of us were having a different conversation, right? It was because I didn't look the way that she looked. And that was the question that I was being asked. But I think for me, it was more of the first time that I felt like, oh, wait a second, I'm an other. And so I would say that was kind of a very jarring feeling to have that question posed to you. So that was my very first experience in the industry from a larger picture.
And coming out of that, I mean, did you take any steps to learn more about that, how that came about, or what did you do coming out of that encounter?
Look, I think I did what many of us do. And I think looking on the screen, I think we could all say that we've done this at one point or another, and that is just to be quiet. Mm-hmm. I think that sometimes it's more comfortable to just not have the conversation, or to say, hey, you know, you could have asked me that in a different way, because experience shows that, you know, when you do speak up, sometimes that can be problematic. And so I think that was the initial, but recent events kind of are allowing that opportunity for all of us to open up and say, you know, we shouldn't be quiet, and we should say when things make us uncomfortable, or when, you know, we're posed a question that maybe could be asked in a different way, because sometimes it's just an unknown factor, right? You just don't know what to say or how to ask something. So.
Right. Cliff, how about you? Have you had any experiences you'd like to share?
Oh, Wes, I have so many. I'm going to begin with one of my very first ones. And you guys, please allow me the etiquette of omitting the names of people and associations, purely because I have so much respect for the people that I've worked with. But I can remember as I was planning to, I had just applied to be CEO of a particular organization in our realm. And I actually won the job. And what I learned later was that I was head over heels better than the other candidate. But the question that came up in the boardroom was, is a Black man ready to be head of this city in the realtor organization? And imagine in the 2000s, that's the discussion that must come up. And it's actually brought up in a boardroom. That is a Black man ready to lead this city? And what did I do about it? Well, first thing I did was I went in there and I knew that people were scared to death. They thought I was getting ready to hire all the Black folks in town and come work for the association. I didn't do that. I worked my butt off. I made sure that we were the #1 association in America within that area, within that realm, to make sure that the people who come after me are never again judged by the same standard whereby which I was judged, which almost didn't get me the job. I can remember also in another organization whereby, again, another realtor leadership role. God's blessed me with some good people, guys. And I remember when the Army 7 Special Forces moved into town. And the Army 7 Special Forces, their mission was to Latin America. And I took a look at my staff and I couldn't find anyone that looked like they might be able to communicate with someone from Latin America. And so the first thing I did was I went out and I made sure I hired people who could communicate with these 10,000 people moving to town. Oh my God, Wes, you would have thought that I was tearing down the wall brick by brick on my own. And these were our soldiers. These were our guys, the 7 Special Forces. When I started hiring people, I got attacked. They said he only hires eye candy. I mean, I got hit from the left and the right, but I didn't look to the left. I didn't look to the right. I didn't listen to what anyone had to say. I continued to do what was right. And today, those former employees look back at me and they thank me for allowing them an opportunity to work in the realtor world.
Awesome, awesome. Monica.
Well, I kind of have a little bit of a similar story to both of these, but you know, when I first started with the organization, I came to work at a realtor association from outside the industry. So I was already an outsider in that sense to the association world. And I quickly learned that in the association world, there's sort of a protectionist environment for not only the positions, but the information and the leadership. And I saw several times, again, like Cliff said, won't give names or anything, but I saw several times gentlemen of the Caucasian descent ascending to positions much faster than I was. And I came with a wealth of experience. It just was from outside of this industry. And it really gave me pause, and it made me work a lot harder. And it didn't keep me from focused on my goals and focused on what I wanted to do and what I want to do. But at the same time, it just gives you a pause, and it makes you reflect on your surroundings and what you have to work against.
Well, I think all of those stories, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that, yes, in the 2000s, this is very real. The fact that, you know, I'm dealing with a panel of very knowledgeable and very active people, and you're still running into this type of thing, I think illustrates how important it is that we address it.
Yeah.
Moving on, as leaders, how are you working to build an inclusive culture that fosters diverse experiences? And more importantly, how do you go about creating a culture that doesn't perpetuate that lack of diversity, which I think is kind of what Monica touched on? We'll start again with Nina.
So, I mean, from a leadership perspective, I would say obviously it's tapping other people on the shoulder and encouraging them. Had somebody not tapped me on the shoulder and said, you would be really great at this, or you would fit really well into this role, I wouldn't be here in that sense. Maybe I would have found my way eventually at some point, but it really took people showing me the way. And I think that we all as leaders have a responsibility to our membership, to our organization, and to our communities that we serve, that, you know, we ensure that the people who are serving in those roles actually look like us, look like the communities that are being served. And so I think from that perspective, you know, we certainly in San Francisco, I will say, we make sure that we support the organizations that support and foster diversity. We make sure that we're included in our community events that foster the same thing. I think that this is encouraging your realtor members, your leadership, to understand all of the cultures in the communities that they serve. So I think from that perspective, it really comes down to an education aspect, because it's the whole more you know, right? The more you know, the better you are able and the more equipped you are to actually serve. So I would say it comes with asking people and saying, hey, you didn't think you could do this, but trust me, let me show you the way and let me help you get there. I think we could all use more of that.
So, Monica, following up to that, have you taken any specific steps, or are there things you're looking at doing?
No, we've taken very specific steps with our association, starting with I conduct new member orientation every month, so I have hands-on knowledge of who's coming into the association. I always ask what their previous career was, if their real estate is not always their first career choice. And based on their background, I then ask them to get involved and send out volunteer worksheets for them to sign up for committees. So that's just first off, and I always look to have people from all different areas participate and get involved. But on top of that, our association, I think it's very incumbent on us as a CEO to have our leadership acknowledge the problem and then work with very specific steps for our future to have diversity inclusion all the way through leadership, and encouraging not only local volunteers to get involved with our association, but on a state and a national level as well. And I think that having those very specific steps prepared with our board of directors is vital.
All right, thank you. Now, Cliff, you work with a pretty large organization. How do you, as a leader, go about making that same type of building that culture within your leadership?
Well, you know, actually, this is the easiest thing to do, Wes. A lot of people make this into rocket science. I look at the people and I look at the money. The first thing I ask myself, in a city like Orlando, our association just shy of 20,000 members now. Where's the money coming from? The people who are buying homes in my city, where are they coming from? They're coming from the UK. They're coming from Brazil. They're coming from England. Where's the money? The people who live in my city. I made it so that I didn't have to change my hiring practices. I made sure that I was hiring people as a policy who were bilingual and who spoke certain languages. And just by changing that policy, I didn't have to go out and discriminate. I didn't have to go out and say, find me all the black folks, find me all the white folks. Just by making sure that I had people who could communicate, it brought all the right people in. Now we have LGBTQ, now we have Black, now we have Latino, now we have Brazilian, now I have Indian. Are y'all following me here? Just by going out and attempting to represent the community, to represent where the money is coming from in Orlando and making that my hiring practice, it gave me a diversified culture. So I didn't have to go out and make changes. And plus I have a heck of an HR person who understands that need. So we make sure that we stipulate must be bilingual. We're looking for people who can speak Portuguese. We're looking for people who can speak French Creole. We're still looking, but what you get is a diversity of people. So just by changing those little policies, Wes, it addressed all the other little issues. We have one of the most diverse staff in Florida. You name it, we got it. And so we don't just have the rainbow. I added 5 more colors to the rainbow. And then we added 3 languages to the rainbow. I might come downstairs and not even hear English. And I love it. Because guys, look, where I can't do no more. I can't tell y'all no more. I'm going too deep, Wes. So if I go that deep, they ain't ready yet. Not for real.
I think you did a good job right there. And one of the things to take away from that, to help our listeners to approach this subject with their leadership groups, is, as you say, follow the money. The fact of the matter is, your future client, present and future clients, are represented in these diverse groups. And if you're going to be successful, you have to be able to address those groups, and you have to be able to do it in a manner that is respectful and inclusive. So I think, you know, for those listening, let that be your guide. You know, you're not doing this because you're on some personal crusade.
Right.
At the end of the day, we're talking about business, and the business is becoming more diverse.
I think that that's the easiest way to convince your leadership to have a diversity and inclusion policy or council or whatever committee, is by saying it makes business sense. This makes business sense.
Go ahead, Cliff.
We had a major victory this week. My president-elect. So one of the things I did also to foster this, Wes, I offered Spanish classes for the staff for free. I didn't want to make it so that anyone sitting in my building was not able to communicate with someone that comes through the door. So part of our staff personal development, the dollars that we allocated classes. So every person on staff, we have a personal tutor to teach literally everyone that's on staff how to speak Spanish. But hey, guess what? Because see, I can't just hire all Spanish speaking personnel, because then I reverse discriminate against the people who are already there. So what do? You make sure that everyone has the same opportunity. So we brought teachers in to teach the staff. My biggest takeaway, one of my biggest victories, my president-elect came to me and said, Cliff, I want to take Spanish lessons. I was like, girl, I got you. Look, say no more. I had the tutor calling her, I'm covering this. And if I can get 2 or 3 more leaders after her to embrace, can y'all see that victory? And that's how you do it. I didn't have to go out and do anything, but just look at who I'm serving and serve them. Okay, kill it, Nina. It's yours.
Well, I'll add to that, Cliff, is that, you know, people want to learn. It's a trait. It's a human trait. We all want to know more. And I think that, you know, I think it's amazing what you're doing in terms of offering that as an option to your staff. There could not be a better way to educate staff, especially when they want to learn. And you'd be surprised. I think you mentioned a few things in your comments previously about how, you know, you felt about walking downstairs and not hearing English around you, right? I mean, there's something beautiful about that. I think what I was going to mention on Monica's point was that, you know, there's no time like the present. So, you know, people feel like, oh, well, maybe we missed that. We don't need a diversity or inclusion committee. And the reality is that when you get those diverse voices at the table, the ideas that come from those people to serve your own membership will blow your mind.
Yes.
That I think is the point you very well made, Cliff.
All right. So we've talked a lot about staff, and I do want to also address, so, you know, it seems everyone is working hard to develop a diverse staff and to do those things. How do you create a supportive environment for the staff? And by that, I mean, if staff encounters a situation or an individual who is not necessarily going along with the diverse policies of the organization, what can you do to make it easier for them to either address it with you or address it with HR or just feel more comfortable in bringing it up and not sweeping it under the rug, which would then perpetuate what we already have? Nina.
So I can speak on this not from a staff perspective or you know, organizing a staff, but from a leadership perspective. I think that there should be a policy for staff to be able to report you know, ways that they're feeling, and that should be a process that is obviously anonymous and all of that. But from that perspective, is like, it's not just the reporting mechanism, it is the culture of what you're developing inside, right, the office, and how open your communication is. So I think that there does have to be a place for staff to have these open meetings where it's like, hey, we want to be better. We are trying to, you know, build this culture, and allowing that open space for staff to talk about how they feel. And sometimes that could be a Pandora's box, right? I mean, we all know that from just our own experiences. But I do think when people come to the table with an ear to listen, I think that there's a lot to be learned from that. So I would say the key to that is communication and really listening to your staff and what they have to say about how they're feeling.
Monica.
I don't think it's something that's established, you know, by a policy. I think it's something that's established by practice. So when, you know, it's not just about diversity, it's about all issues, and having that open door with your staff and making them comfortable to know that you're there to listen, to give them feedback, and that they have the forum to do so. And it's not just about diversity. It's a constant practice that you establish within your staff and within the people that work for you. So for me, it wasn't, there's creating a specific policy for this. It's always been there. And we're just, this is just an extension of that.
And again, I want to ended up with Cliff, because for Monica, I know it's relatively easy due to the size of the staff and, you know, the intimacy of the office. But again, Cliff, you're working with a much larger organization. Where do you fall between the two perspectives we just heard?
Making sure that there's an open door. There must be an open door, and there must be a culture of being able to speak. But I want to add that my staff knows that when they're right, they're right. And if someone comes in, if someone is abusive, if someone says something out of line, I'm going to come and stand with them, and I will have such a passion that that other person won't ever think about saying something out of line to my staff again. There's a zero tolerance policy for getting out of line. When they're wrong, I tell them that they're wrong, and I will ask them to apologize. But if someone comes in, they say something out of line, they say something racist, they say something sexist, they say something offensive, well, then I will immediately let that person know that there's under no circumstance am I with you. Are we cool with it? Am I down with it? Am I gonna just let that slide? I'm gonna call it out. I'm gonna call it out right then, and we deal with it at that moment. And having vice presidents under me and a chief operating officer who share the same ideal. You see, it can't just be with me. They've got to know that at every level of leadership at Aura, at the Orlando Regional Realtor Association, bigotry, hatred, sexism, racism, it's not going to be tolerated. So that when they come to work, they can feel like they're in a safe haven and that they're in a safe environment and that their views are respected.
Awesome. So I think, you know, just having this conversation is good. And I really want our listeners to take away from this, or our viewers, I should say, this is an active process. Listening to the three of you, the one constant that I've heard is that it's an active process. You can't just sit back and expect the situation to rectify itself. You can't expect it to, you can't put it on autopilot. And ultimately it is about meeting the needs of our respective customers. And as we've touched on in all the questions, diversity is everywhere, and the marketplace is changing. The buyers are changing. Different groups are beginning to have louder voices within society. And so for those reasons, we have to be prepared and ready to address those groups. And again, I think the things that all three of you are doing are a step in the right direction, and our viewers should be able to take something back to their organization that falls in line with that. To wrap it up, I would like to give each of you a chance just to make one more statement about our topic.
I'll kick it off this time.
There you go.
Okay, so if I might add in my message to everyone out there, and I know that we're looking at viewers from New York to San Diego and from Michigan to Maine, don't be afraid to have the difficult conversations. Listen, people around you have to become comfortable with the uncomfortable. For far too long, we've pity-patted and pussyfooted around with serious conversations. And the things that we're going through now as a country, they are 60 years old. These are conversations that we should have been having in 1964, right after the Civil Rights Act passed. But what we did was we glazed over it and we pretended, oh, are we good now? No, we ain't good. There's some things that we should have talked about a long time ago that are now coming to the surface because they were neglected and glazed over. So when you talk to people, stop avoiding having those difficult conversations. She's not a little lady. I have people today, even here, that they call me boy, and they don't mean anything by it. They don't know any better. But I have to tell them, you can't call me boy anymore. And these are older gentlemen who mean well. Are you understanding what I'm saying? But you have to become comfortable with the uncomfortable and put people in their place, because it's the only way that they're going to learn. And there's a way to do it. When you do so, you do it in love. They always say you catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar. Don't be so sharp-tongued that people are now afraid and they're running from you and they don't ever want to talk to anybody else like you again. You've got to be able to have the conversation with them, cause them to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, and then walk away having had a constructive conversation. We can no longer afford to run from conversations that we should have had 60 years ago. Today, while it's fresh on our minds and while it's a hot topic, let's have those discussions.
Awesome. Monica?
I have to agree with everything Cliff just said. And I wanted to give a little statistics. And in Texas, Hispanics are 38% of the population, but right now we only represent 12% of CEOs or AEs in leadership positions within associations. So we're not doing enough. So we understand that there's an issue. We understand that we're working towards diversity and inclusion, but we actually have to have change and action taken behind that. And, you know, I want to say it was 3 years ago at a presentation for CMLS, Stefan Swanepoel said something like, adaptation is key to success. And you know, this is the time. We are tired of waiting for the adaptation. We've got to take actionable steps for now.
All right. Nina.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to say that Cliff said everything that I wanted to say, but you know, everything and more. It was awesome. People should speak with that kind of passion more often, and I feel like there will be the people listening on the other side will actually hear it because it's so plain and it's so simple to speak with love, and to come from a place that if you don't understand, I will help you understand. And as leaders, we have an obligation to close that gap of silency, of not speaking up, about not being able to listen. I think just where we are as a society, I think as an organization, if we start from that perspective, there's a lot that we can accomplish to serve the people that we want to serve. So that's what I would have to say.
Thank you. Well, I think you all have given our viewers quite a bit of quality information, quite a bit of context. And I think that as viewers, you should be able to go back to your organizations. If you're not taking any of these steps, you need to start, and you need to start now. I don't care what market you're in, what it looks like to you now. It is changing. It is going to change. And the best thing to do is get in front of it and start putting into practice some of the things you've heard from our panelists today. I think this was awesome. You're going to hear some more about this during the CMLS conference, and hopefully you will also see a little bit more of us during one of the breakouts. But in the meanwhile, feel free to reach out to any of us, and we would be more than happy to share some more insight and help you along the path of improving diversity. Thank you.
Thanks so much.